the cry that changed everything. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It drummed softly against the hospital window, whispering through the cracks like a lullaby meant for no one. Inside room 214, the machines hummed their lonely rhythm, keeping time with the shallow breaths of a baby who had never learned to move his legs. His name was Eli, 6 months old, born with a spinal injury so severe that doctors said he might never crawl, never stand, never run. Across the glass, Maya and Daniel stood in silence. They weren't supposed to be here that day. They had only come to deliver donated blankets to the children's ward, yet something about that room stopped them. Maya's eyes locked on the tiny figure inside the incubator, the small hands twitching with quiet determination, the soft cry that seemed to rise from somewhere deeper than pain. It was the sound of wanting to live. Daniel reached out, touched the glass, and whispered, "He's fighting." Maya nodded, tears already streaking her cheeks. Then so should we. 3 weeks later, they signed the adoption papers. The nurses called them brave. Their families called them crazy. But when they carried Eli home for the first time, wrapped in a blue blanket too big for his fragile frame, the world outside seemed to slow. The city noise faded. The air itself felt sacred. The couple's little house was quiet then, a sanctuary of second chances. But there was one more heartbeat waiting inside. A German Shepherd puppy named Scout, barely a year old, with paws too big for his body and a heart that pulsed with pure devotion. From the moment he saw the baby, Scout's tail stilled. His head tilted. Something ancient, instinctive passed between them. Not curiosity, not play, but recognition. At night, Scout would curl at the base of Eli's crib, his chest rising and falling with the rhythm of the baby's breathing. Every whimper, every restless cry, Scout heard it first. Sometimes Maya would wake to find the dog standing guard, eyes fixed on the child, ears pricked, as though waiting for something unseen. For a while, the house glowed with a fragile kind of peace. Eli began to smile. His tiny fingers reached for Scout's fur. The couple believed, perhaps for the first time, that love could outpace the limits written in medical charts. Until one morning, the silence broke. It began with Scout's low growl from the nursery. Daniel rushed in, heart pounding, to find the puppy standing over Eli's crib, teeth bared, body rigid. The sound that came from him wasn't playful. It was primal, protective, terrifying. Then Scout lunged. The baby's cry pierced through the walls, sharp as glass. Maya screamed. And in that moment, a second suspended between instinct and horror, no one understood why the dog they loved had suddenly turned savage. But by the end of that day, they would learn the truth. And it would change everything they thought they knew about loyalty, danger, and love. The silent crib. The first night Eli came home, the house felt too still, the kind of silence that hums in your chest like held breath. Rain tapped softly against the window, and Maya sat beside the crib, watching her new son sleep beneath a sea of pale blue blankets. His legs didn't move, but his fingers did, curling and uncurling as if they were searching for something to hold on to. Daniel hovered in the doorway, afraid to break the spell. He wasn't sure how to be a father to a child who might never run toward him, never climb into his arms on his own. But when Eli stirred, his tiny face scrunching in discomfort, Daniel crossed the room without thinking. He placed a trembling hand on his son's chest and whispered, "You're safe now." Behind him, a soft whine broke the quiet. Scout, their German Shepherd pup, had been pacing the hallway since the baby arrived. Now he padded forward, tail low, ears perked. Maya tensed, unsure. But the dog only pressed his nose gently against the side of the crib and exhaled, as though promising something only he understood. From that night on, Scout rarely left Eli's side. He slept by the crib, followed the stroller, even waited outside the bathroom when Maya bathed the child. Sometimes, in the soft hours before dawn, Maya would find Scout staring into the crib, watching Eli breathe. There was no barking, no playfulness, only vigilance. It was beautiful, and a little eerie. Still, the couple clung to hope. Eli began smiling more, his laughter filling the house like light through cracked blinds. For the first time, the couple allowed themselves to dream that maybe love could make miracles, but miracles often arrive disguised as warnings. And soon the warning would come. The cry before dawn. It was a Sunday morning when the quiet cracked open. The air was heavy with approaching rain. Maya had just poured Daniel coffee when Scout's low growl rippled through the house. Deep, guttural, unlike anything they'd heard before. The sound came from the nursery. Daniel rushed in first. What he saw froze him mid-step. Scout stood on his hind legs, paws pressed to the crib rail, barking frantically. Eli was still, his lips pale, his chest barely moving. For a moment, the world narrowed to the sound of that bark. Then instinct took over. Maya snatched the baby from the crib. Daniel dialed emergency services, voice breaking. Scout kept barking, circling the room, pushing against Maya's legs as if trying to get closer to the baby. In the ambulance, Eli's tiny hand hung limp in Maya's grasp. The paramedics' words blurred together. Respiratory distress, possible seizure, stabilize airway. Daniel couldn't speak. Scout's cries echoed faintly from the driveway as they sped away. At the hospital, machines replaced the sound of their hearts. The doctors worked quickly. One nurse explained that Eli's weakened spine could sometimes interfere with breathing, a risk they'd been warned about but never seen. The episode could have been fatal. When the doctor finally said the words, "He's stable now," Maya broke down completely. But later that night, when they returned home, something caught Daniel's attention. Scratch marks on the nursery door, deep and frantic. Scout had been clawing at it before the barking began. He hadn't attacked. He'd been warning them. The next morning, Daniel sat on the floor beside Scout, tears streaking his face. "You saved him," he whispered. Scout simply rested his head on Daniel's knee, but fate wasn't done testing them yet. The second miracle days turned into weeks, and life slowly rebuilt itself around routine. Hospital visits, therapy sessions, sleepless nights. Scout shadowed every moment. He lay beside Eli's therapy mat during exercises, sometimes nudging the baby's toes with his nose as if urging them to move. One afternoon, Maya noticed something strange. As Eli lay on his stomach, cooing softly, Scout began to whine and paw gently at the blanket beneath him. "What is it, boy?" she asked. Then she saw it, Eli's foot twitching. Not a spasm. A deliberate, tiny movement. She screamed for Daniel. The therapist rushed over. The movement repeated, faint but real. The room fell silent, tears pooling in every eye. The doctor later called it neurological stimulation, rare but possible. Something about Scout's presence, his warmth, even his vibrations, could have been triggering sensory responses. From that day, Scout became part of the therapy. He'd lie across Eli's legs, lending gentle pressure, his heartbeat steady. Eli's eyes followed him constantly, laughter bubbling whenever Scout nudged his hands. Maya began filming the moments, believing she was witnessing the impossible. But one night, Eli's breathing changed again. Slow, strained, shallow. Scout noticed first. He whimpered, pawing at Maya's bed until she woke. She found the baby pale, motionless. Panic returned, but this time she didn't freeze. She performed CPR as Daniel called for help. The ambulance arrived just in time. Eli lived. Twice now, Scout had been the first to know. Maya realized something deeper. Scout wasn't just protecting Eli, he was somehow connected to him. Their bond wasn't emotional anymore. It was biological, and that terrified her. The night of glass rain. It was late autumn when the storm came, the kind that splits trees and shatters sleep. Wind howled through the cracks of the old house, and thunder rolled like something alive. Maya had placed Eli in his crib early. Scout curled as usual by the side. Around midnight, a loud crash shattered the night. A branch had smashed through the nursery window. Glass sprayed across the floor. Scout barked furiously, standing over the crib, shielding the baby with his body. Daniel burst in seconds later, heart pounding. Rain lashed the room, curtains whipping like sails. Scout refused to move. He stood between the baby and the shards, his fur glistening with rain. Daniel grabbed Eli, sweeping him to safety, but Scout didn't flinch even as tiny cuts bled across his paws. When the storm passed, the house was a mess of broken glass and soaked blankets. Eli was unharmed. Scout, however, limped, blood trailing softly on the floorboards. At the vet, the doctor bandaged his legs. "He protected your son," she said quietly. "Instinct like that can't be taught." That night, Maya sat beside Scout, brushing his fur with trembling hands. "You keep saving him," she whispered. "Maybe you were sent here for him." Scout looked up at her with those steady amber eyes, and for a moment she almost believed it. But miracles come with a cost. And fate was not finished collecting. The gift beyond fear. Winter arrived like a whisper. Eli was growing, laughing more, moving his hands freely, even kicking weakly during therapy. Doctors called it unexplained progress. Maya called it grace. One snowy morning, Scout didn't wake up. He lay by Eli's crib, chest rising shallowly. Daniel rushed him to the vet. Diagnosis: internal infection, likely from the cuts he'd sustained during the storm. The vet's voice broke when she said, "We can try to save him, but it's risky." Maya held Scout's paw. "You've done enough," she whispered through tears. "Rest, my brave boy." Days later, Scout passed peacefully at home, his head resting beside Eli's tiny legs. That night, the baby, who'd never spoken a word, made a sound. Not a cry, not a whimper. A single word, soft and fragile. "Scout." Maya and Daniel froze. It was impossible. But Eli smiled, his fingers twitching toward the empty space beside him. Months later, during a therapy session, Eli took his first step, wobbly, trembling, but real. The doctors couldn't explain it. Maya didn't try. She only looked at the photo of a young German shepherd hanging by the crib and whispered, "You kept your promise." Outside, the first spring breeze carried the faintest echo, the sound of paws in the grass, loyal as ever.